Of course, the election campaign now only 2 weeks to go. Blessed relief after 3 years of political torture. We go to the polls in just 14 more sleeps. Is it over already? That's the big question. Some really bad polling coming out for the Labor Party, including for Kevin Rudd himself in his own seat. Is it all over already? As you know, I've been saying for 2 years Labor cannot win this election, and even at the start of this campaign I talked about how they really have no strong ground to campaign on, and that's what we're starting to see now. Really big problems for the government because they can't talk about the budget and economic management with much authority because they have such a poor record there in not delivering their surplus. They can't really talk about climate change and the carbon tax because they've had every different position on that issue. They're trying to run a scare campaign about what Tony Abbott might do to the budget, but it's pretty hard for Kevin Rudd to run a scare campaign on Tony Abbott when people don't trust the Labor Party. Very, very difficult situation for the government. And if we look at border protection, that's another issue they want to talk about, saying that they've got a solution there, but the government's got such an appalling record on border protection and the whole country knows that. So it's an impossible issue for them to talk about. I'll go to an example on this from today. Now, the opposition have tried to get back onto border protection policy again today. Tony Abbott and his Immigration Minister Scott Morrison up in Darwin announcing some more detail on what they're going to do. Now, it's hundreds of millions of dollars that's going to be spent mainly around the region trying to work with other countries to disrupt the people smuggling business. Now, there's nothing particularly new in this. Governments in the past have done this, but they've released a lot of detail. And buried among that detail is the suggestion that, you know, apart from sort of trying to disrupt the business model and get some information from villagers, now and then they might actually, Australian officers or Australian police personnel or Australian operatives in the region might actually buy some boats from people who are thinking about selling their boats or using their boats for people smuggling. They might get some money from Australia to do something else, essentially to disrupt the business and maybe give us some information to try and stop the people smuggling trade. Now, the government picks up on this, and as usual, when the government picks up on a bit of spin, then the media goes along with the Labor Party spin on this, and Twitter jumps on board, and it's all about whether or not the government's going to buy the boats. Now, whether about the coalition's going to buy the boats, and they mock the policy. And so that's Labor's attack today, is to mock the coalition policy on boats. Have a look at Immigration Minister Tony Burke.
All the mad ideas I've heard in immigration, I think boat buyback wins.
Now there's your problem. There's the Immigration Minister who's trying to mock a coalition policy when it's his government that took down the strong border protection regime in this country 5 years ago. It's his government that has seen 50,000 people arrive, and he's trying to mock the coalition policy. The Immigration Minister there is trying to mock the coalition policy when it's his government's policies that have led to more than 1,100 people dying at sea. He's trying to mock the opposition policy when he has come up with a new Papua New Guinea solution only 6 or 7 weeks ago, and since that solution's been put in place, nearly 3,000 people have arrived on 40 boats, and we read today that the Papua New Guinea authorities are worried about the influx of asylum seekers breaking their capacity in Papua New Guinea. It's very difficult for the Labor Party to mock the coalition on border protection policy. Another minister had a go at it today. Have a look at Bill Shorten.
This is crazy. What could only be called the maritime version of cash for clunkers.
Cash for clunkers. There you go again. That's the Workplace Relations Minister, Bill Shorten, trying to mock the coalition policy by referring to the ridiculous cash for clunkers policy that was going to pay people for their clapped-out old cars so they could buy cleaner, greener cars. The trouble is, the policy you're talking about there, cash for clunkers, is a Rudd government policy. It's a policy this government, the Rudd Labor government, tried to put in place and dropped because it's so bad. So now you've got government ministers mocking coalition ideas on the basis that they might be just as bad as some of the policies they've put up and had to drop. Really is difficult. This is the trouble. When you've got a bad record, there is nowhere to hide in an election campaign. I'm telling you, this has every possibility of getting a lot worse for Labor. The polls are disastrous at the moment. They are heading for a very, very significant defeat. And there's only one of two things can happen in the next 2 weeks. Either we'll see a dramatic turnaround from Kevin Rudd and the government where they get their act together on a scare campaign or something and haul themselves back into the game and reduce their losses, or the whole show's going to fall apart.